The photograph rests in my hands, its edges yellowed and worn by time. On it, 5 children grin at the camera during what seems to be an ordinary summer afternoon in 1934. Last month, while clearing my grandmother's attic in Oakwood Hills, I stumbled upon it tucked inside a leather-bound album. On the back, in faded handwriting, was a curious note. 5 smiled, for were there. August 12, 1934. My name is Daniel Harmon, and that single discovery has led me down a path I never imagined. What follows is the story I've pieced together about this photograph and the children of Oakwood Hills, a quiet little town whose calm exterior hid more than it revealed. That summer of 1934 was unusually warm in Oakwood Hills. The Great Depression had battered many communities, yet this small town nestled among rolling hills and dense forests managed to keep an air of normalcy. Children still played in the streets, families continued their Sunday picnics at the lake. Mr. Peterson's general store still displayed penny candy in glass jars on the counter. Among the town's children were 5 inseparable friends: Thomas Miller, Elizabeth Lizzie Caldwell, Robert Bobby Jenkins, Margaret Maggie Sullivan, and James Jimmy Wallace. All around 10 years old, they were stepping from childhood innocence into a growing awareness of the complicated world beyond. Thomas, tall for his age with an unruly mop of brown hair, was their unofficial leader. His father owned the local newspaper, giving Thomas access to stories other kids never heard. Lizzie, always with a book in hand, was the academic standout. Her round, wire-framed glasses slid down her nose as she read, and she'd push them back without looking up. Her father, the town doctor, had taught her medical terms that impressed even adults. Bobby, the athlete, moved fast and handled a baseball with ease. His father had once played semi-professional ball but, after the crash of '29, had to take a factory job. Bobby practiced endlessly, determined to fulfill the dream his father had been forced to leave behind. Maggie, with red pigtails and a vivid imagination, enthralled the others with stories she invented, so rich that even grown-ups would pause to listen. Her father worked the town's telegraph office, giving Maggie an early ear for news from far away. And then there was quiet, observant Jimmy Wallace. Son of Harold Wallace, the town's only photographer, Jimmy spent his hours learning the craft in his father's darkroom, developing the same eye for detail. That summer, the 5 called themselves the Firefly 5, inspired by their evening adventures catching glowing insects in mason jars and releasing them back into the night. They explored woods, built a fort by the creek, and shared secrets only children share. What makes this photograph unsettling is what I uncovered on a visit to Oakwood Hills 2 weeks ago. The town library keeps old newspapers on record. When I mentioned the children's names, the elderly librarian, Mrs. Fletcher, her eyes clouded by memory, said, "Oh, those poor children, such a tragedy." According to the Oakwood Hills Gazette, dated August 10, 1934, 2 days before the date on the photograph, Jimmy Wallace had gone missing. The headline reads, "Local boy missing. Search continues." The article describes Jimmy, aged 10, last seen August 7 heading into the woods with his friends. When he didn't return for supper, his parents notified the sheriff. By morning a search party had formed, focusing on Blackwater Creek where the children often played. Sheriff Davis told the paper, "We believe the boy may have wandered too far into the woods." Jimmy's father was quoted, "Jimmy knows those woods. He wouldn't just get lost. Something must have happened to my boy." The remaining 4 children were questioned. They all said the same thing: Jimmy had left to go help his father in the darkroom. For 3 days the town combed the woods, lanterns at night, volunteers from neighboring communities, even dragging the creek, yet no trace of Jimmy. And yet, dated August 12, 5 days after he vanished, this photograph shows 5 smiling children: Thomas, Lizzie, Bobby, Maggie, and Jimmy. During my research I met Eleanor Sullivan, Maggie's younger sister, now in her 90s. Clear-eyed and sharp-minded, she welcomed me into her home. "I was only 6, she said, clasping her hands in her lap. "But some things you don't forget." After Jimmy disappeared, she told me, the other 4 began acting strangely, whispering among themselves, falling silent around adults, spending hours in Thomas's basement. "My sister wouldn't tell me what they were doing," Eleanor said. But at night she cried, saying, "We didn't mean to." Mother thought she was upset about Jimmy. On August 11th, Harold Wallace received an anonymous note promising information about Jimmy. It told him to bring his camera to the old oak tree at Blackwater Creek at noon the next day. Desperate, Harold informed Sheriff Davis, who accompanied him. When they arrived, Thomas, Lizzie, Bobby, and Maggie were waiting. "Mr. Wallace," Thomas reportedly said, "Jimmy wants you to take our picture." At first Harold thought it a cruel prank, but the children insisted Jimmy was there in the middle. Sheriff Davis began questioning them, but Harold, perhaps clinging to hope, decided to humor them. "Stand together and I'll take your picture," he said. They lined up by the oak, Thomas far left, Lizzie next, an empty space in the middle, Maggie beside it, Bobby on the far right. Through his viewfinder Harold saw only 4 solemn children. "Smile," he told them. They did. Later, developing the film in his darkroom, Harold saw what no one could explain, 5 children standing there, Jimmy clear as day. Word spread. Some called it a miracle, others, a hoax. Sheriff Davis seized the photograph as evidence. Under intense questioning, the children's story cracked. 3 days later Bobby confessed, on August 7th they'd been playing dares by the creek. Jimmy, eager to prove himself, tried to cross on a fallen log. The water was swollen, the current strong. He lost his balance and fell. Thomas and Bobby ran downstream, Lizzie and Maggie ran for help. By the time adults arrived, Jimmy was gone. Frightened, the 4 concocted a cover story, thinking if no one knew, they'd escape blame. After Bobby's confession, searchers found Jimmy's body 2 miles downstream. Authorities ruled it a tragic accident. The 4 were never charged, but guilt shaped their lives. Harold and his wife left town, the photography studio became a hardware store. The Wallace name faded, except for whispered stories of the photo. Officially, Sheriff Davis concluded Harold had used a spirit photography double exposure, common in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, to combine an earlier image of Jimmy with the new picture. Some believed Harold did it in denial or as vengeance. Case closed. But I'm not convinced. Thomas Miller, later a physics professor, said in a 1984 interview, "Science can explain many things, but not everything. All I can say is that when Mr. Wallace took our picture, we felt Jimmy there with us, and apparently so did the camera. I tracked the original photograph through county records to the Historical Society. Under magnification, there were no signs of manipulation. Yet in the background, partially hidden by branches, a 6th figure seems to watch the children." Harold Wallace had an older brother killed in World War I. Surviving photos show a striking resemblance to that blurry figure. On my final visit to Oakwood Hills, standing by the old oak tree, William Davis, the sheriff's grandson, told me his grandfather never believed the double exposure theory but needed the case closed. In his private journal, he recorded multiple residents claiming to see Jimmy around town during those days, on Main Street, outside the library, at his father's studio. Not ghosts exactly, but something between memory and reality. Some things can't be explained conventionally, the journal ends. What the camera captured that day wasn't a trick. The 4 surviving children met every August 12th at the Oak until Thomas, the last, died in 1989. Lizzie had become a nurse during World War II and died in 1943. Bobby was killed in Korea in 1951. Maggie became a teacher in Oakwood Hills, dying in 1978. On the back of the photograph beneath Harold's note is another line, written in a child's uneven hand, "I forgive you. J.W." According to the curator, that writing wasn't there when first catalogued. It appeared in the 1980s while on display. So what really happened? A father's hoax, children's trauma, or a moment when the veil between life and death thinned just enough to be captured on film? I leave that to you. As for me, I believe some mysteries exist where technology and emotion intersect. A camera records light from the physical world, but perhaps, rarely, it records something more, love, guilt, longing that transcends it. 5 children smiled for a photograph in the summer of 1934. 4 were physically present when the shutter clicked. In the resulting image, 5 faces look back across the decades, a memento of friendship, loss, and the enduring question of what lingers after we're gone. This is Daniel Harmon for Shadow Frames, bringing to light the stories living in history's shadows. Thank you for listening. In my grandmother's attic I found more photographs with curious notes. If you'd like to hear more stories like Jimmy Wallace's, subscribe to Shadow Frames. Some mysteries wait to be discovered, others to be told. Until next time, look closely at old photographs. You never know what, or who, might be looking back.